Kia ora. Today we're going to read one of the stories out of this book, Hideous and Hilarious, 30 New Zealand historical stories. This story is called ANZAC Day and it's by Kelly Gardiner. The summer we found the boat, Jake turned 13. Jake's the head of the family now, Mum announced. Then she turned to me. You have to do what he says. I couldn't see how it made any difference. Jake had been bossing me around since the day I was born. All the months while Dad was away at war and then later when they said Dad wouldn't ever come home, Jake was in charge. Every morning he ordered me to bring the cows into the shed. Every evening he told me to blow out the lantern as if I was a half-wit. But then I found the boat. Someone had hidden it in a large pile of scrub at one end of our beach. I pulled the branches away, and underneath was a beautiful bright red dinghy. I looked around. The only ship in the cove was One-Eyed Pete's, moored near the headlands. But Pete had a dinghy, painted glossy black like a ship. This wasn't his boat. It didn't belong to anyone. It was mine, until Jake found me there and took over everything. You get up to the shed, he said. I'll take care of the boat. It's called the Mauritania. How do you know that it's called that? I just named her, he said. It's only 10 feet long, I argued. You can't name it after the biggest ship on earth. She's my boat now. I can call her anything I like. Jake looked like he'd belt me if I argued any more. So I just whispered to myself as we hid the boat in the boat shed. Stupid name. Jake told Mum he'd found the boat washed ashore. He didn't say that I'd discovered it first. From then on, every day after we finished our farm work, we rowed around the little cove, keeping well clear of One-Eyed Pete's black ship. Mum said Pete was a poor old chap who needed peace and quiet. He might have tricked Mum and Jake with his crayfish and his homemade beer, but he couldn't fool me. Pete rode to our place every week to buy a can of milk. He had a jagged scar across his face and a bit of a limp. He was obviously a spy. I don't have to row, Jake always said. I'm the captain. I rowed until my arms ached and my back hurt and sweat splashed down into the salt water sloshing around our bare feet. Jake sat in the prow, acting like Captain Cook discovering the island, or Hongi Hika in his waka. That's why, one day when Jake was in the shed and Mum was drinking tea in the kitchen with One-Eyed Pete, I crept down to the beach and slipped the boat into the water. Just once, I could be captain. I headed straight across the cove towards the spy ship. I tied the boat up out of sight of our house and climbed a rope aboard the ship. Two cats lay on a hatch asleep in the sun. On the deck, the frame of a half-built dinghy stretched between two sawhorses. At the stern, a telescope on a tripod pointed out to sea, towards the shipping lanes. A spy telescope. I tiptoed to a door that led below and put one hand to push it open. Someone grabbed me from behind. Let go! I shouted. What do you do poking around? Pete's face was red with anger. Or maybe from rowing fast across the cove to catch me. Spy! I yelled right in his face like an insult. He nearly laughed his head off. I'll report you, I said. To who? He said. Your big scary brother. He patted my shoulder. Nobody employs one-eyed spies, he said. But if I was a spy, you could be my partner in crime. I can't, I said. I have to do the milking. He grinned. His scar was pretty shocking up close, but his smile almost made up for it. Let's have afternoon tea instead. He pulled one of Mum's fruitcakes out of his satchel and sat down on the hatch with the cats. I didn't know what to do except for sit down next to him and have a piece of cake. I knew your dad, he said, after we'd had 3 slices each, when we were lads. My mouth was so full, so I just nodded. Next time I saw him on on the beach. Next time I saw him was on the beach at Gallipoli. I looked up, straight into his scarred face. My stomach and heart banged together, but Pete didn't notice. It was late in the day, I remember. There was a Turkish machine gun on the cliff spraying the beach with bullets. He stopped talking long enough to light a pipe. I chucked myself behind a sand dune, and there were lots of fellas there already. One of them was your dad. Pete, he said to me, what fool let you in the army? Cheeky bugger. I blinked a bit at that. I could imagine Dad's grin, the way his skin wrinkled around his eyes and the muscles in his brown arms. We'd have stayed safe till dark if we could, Pete went on, but we heard fellas shouting, wounded on the beach. Up and at him, says your dad, and so off we went. He was shot not long after. Pete paused. So was I. We sat silently for a while. Gulls screeched and circled and fought over a bait bucket. I didn't know he was shot, I said. Didn't your mother tell you? She just said he wasn't coming home. Sorry, lad, said Pete, but I reckoned he'd want you to know. I stood up. Suddenly I felt I had to get home fast. See you, I said, and jumped into my boat before he could say anything else. I rowed harder and faster than I had ever done before. The boat cut through the water, leaving a milky wake behind it that led all the way back to the ship where Pete stood watching. Then I stopped. So that's why Pete was here, moored in our cove, in his lonely black ship. That's why he brought crayfish for Mum. That's why he built a boat just big enough for 2 boys and hid it in our beach. Because that's what Dad would have done. I waved. Pete waved back. Jake was waiting grumpily at our beach. I've renamed the boat, I announced. Her name is ANZAC.